I'm thinking that YouTube techies probably shouldn't show their face in public. Well, somebody's here now. Is that you, little one?
No.
Okay. Hi, Jeff. How's it going? Got one. Hi, Tricky. Yep. I'd try five, never even made it to the thing, man. It just went straight to the swirl of death. I think that's very apropos. It looks like exactly what you'd expect to see when things going down the YouTube. Uh, hey, honey bunny. See, we now have three people on, and it's showing. Oh, it just upgraded to two. Oh my goodness, what a mess!
Don't look at me. It's YouTube.
Oh, by the way, I was reading an article somewhere that they found a giant phosphate rock deposit in Norway. Believe it or not, um, it. We could try Rumble too. But apparently, this phosphate rock deposit in Norway is just barely shy of the entire world's known reserves of phosphate. So it's a really big addition to the reserves. And so um, that's yeah, theoretically a good thing. Never hurts to have more resources. Oh, you ready to take back over?
Move tail. I will finish.
Oh, my goodness.
And in other random and final news, I put the computer aside because I'm trying to keep my hands away from everything. In other random and weird news, the movie Sound of Freedom. In case you missed it, Angel Studios makes good movies. Okay? Angel Studios actually makes really good movies. Sound of Freedom came out on the 4th of July. Sound of Freedom has already made more money than it costs to make. And, well, if you have not seen this movie yet, I strongly suggest that you see this movie. If you have seen this movie, or this movie is not playing in your area, I strongly suggest you call movie theaters and yell at them to get this movie. If you have seen this movie, or you can't see the movie because it is too emotionally disturbing due to the nature of the movie, dealing with human trafficking, especially child trafficking, for very bad things, far beyond cobalt mining, um, they have a pay it forward feature on the website. Buy lots of tickets, and that way other people can see the movie for free, even. It should be noted that the mainstream media has decided that this movie is, I believe the Rolling Stone magazine characterized it as a QAnon festival for conspiracy-addled boomers. Unlike the movie Cuties, which was a poorly marketed, very important cultural film about the coming of age of young girls. In case you missed it, Cuties was all practically kiddie porn. Says something about our friends over at Rolling Stone, as if we didn't already know. CNN also flat out told all their viewers that no one should go see this movie. Literally, they said nobody should go see this movie. Coincidentally, I think it was just yesterday, yet another high up CNN executive went and got himself arrested for inappropriate imagery of young children and inappropriate relations with young children. It should also be noted that our dear friends at Disney had this movie done for about 5 years and sat on it and decided not to release it at all. It should also be noted that Disney's stock has just about dropped by 40% over the last couple of years. Thanks to their strong woke stance, their ruining of several major franchises, their canceling of several of their old, wonderful classic rides at their various parks, and also, for some bizarre and unaccountable reason, attendance is down at the parks. I'm sure this has nothing to do with the fact that it now costs as much as a month's average mortgage for a family of 4 to do Disney for 2 days. That may or may not have something to do with it, the whole recession thing. Funny though, the rest of the travel agencies actually, the rest of the travel industry is actually looking pretty good right about now. We shall see what we shall saw. But the goddess has long boycotted Hollyweird and all Holly weirdos. The goddess and Doofus back there only go to see movies in a theater when they are non-woke movies that are made by companies like Angel. The goddess will go see any movie that is made by Angel, whether the goddess wants to see it or not. Because one of the few ways that we can actually do some good is voting with our wallet. And believe it or not, in the voting with our wallet category, a certain beer in a blue can that shall remain nameless, the one that used to be epitomized by gorgeous, blooded, hideously expensive, very well-bred Clydesdales, and all American imagery, and is now epitomized by a dude in a dress who went from being a brunette to a blonde because apparently he discovered blondes have more fun. Don't know, but that's kind of a scary thought anyway. Anyway, they put out a list of how all the beers were doing after the 4th of July weekend. Bear in mind, this particular beer practically for free 4th of July. They did Memorial Day weekend. Here in little old Helena, Montana, said beer by said company, after the $15 rebate, was running $3.49 for an 18 pack, a 24 pack, and $5.49 for a 30 pack. One would think said beer would be flying off the shelves. One would think that said beer that used to be the number one beer company in the United States would be back on top. But oh no, alas and alack, it wasn't in the top 3 beers. It wasn't even in the top 10 beers. Believe it or not, in the latest sales records, this particular company was outsold by Pabst Blue Ribbon. The goddess does not drink beer because the goddess is firmly convinced that beer is actually thinly disguised carbonated mule pee, and the goddess does not drink carbonated mule pee. That said, the goddess is well aware that there was a time when PBR had an awful reputation. And the people who said redneck, white socks, and blue ribbon were few and far between. But apparently, people are discovering that good old PBR is indeed a cut above a certain other brand that used to be American and is now Belgian, and hopefully will not be long for the world of alcohol at the rate things are going.
Go Flower Gold Wizards! Go Flower Gold Wizards!
Absolutely. This is just more proof that our friend at Flower Gold Wizards, the wizard himself, is a man of taste and culture.
Jason the Mason.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And Rigby. And Mrs. Wizard. But yeah, that's the way things are going in the voting with your wallet department. And in another humorous and hilarious epilogue on the Ben and Jerry's. So on the 4th of July, in case you missed it, Ben and Jerry's put out a nice tweet that said that everything in America was built on stolen land. We need to give all that land back to the indigenous persons. Should be noted that Ben and Jerry's donates to the same eco-terroristic organization that Target donates to that wants to close Mount Rushmore, in case you missed that. Well, shortly after Ben and Jerry's put out that tweet, an indigenous tribe in their home state of Vermont put out a tweet on social media and said, excuse us, excuse me, hello, Ben and Jerry's, Unilever, parent company of Ben and Jerry's, your headquarters is on indigenous land that belongs to our tribe. So, anytime you want to give it back, we'll be happy to take it. Ben and Jerry's chose to draw the curtain of charity across this unhappy incident and fall silent. Unilever, the parent company of Ben and Jerry's, apparently decided to fire the head of social media marketing for Ben and Jerry's because a couple of days after this 4th of July hilarity, there was an ad all over all of the various employment sites,
I'll get to that in just a minute,
LinkedIn,
P-Man.
Indeed, etc.
Man?
I will be right with you, man. That said that Ben and Jerry's was looking to hire a new social media marketing director. So yes, gold and silver are still on sale. Back up the truck, get unbanked, lest thy fiat go poof, and if you don't hold it, you don't own it. Bye-bye. Back to mining. Get your happy self back to mining stuff. Help your people.
Well, does the location of a spring-fed lake near a placer deposit mean anything? Yes, there's groundwater. Aside from that, you can't really draw much in the way of conclusions. However, whenever you have a spring, you have, hey, Team Jesus, how's it going? You missed the promotion of Sound of Freedom that Eva just did. We're on your team in some ways. We're definitely working towards the same goals.
Sound of Freedom, great movie. Gotta see it.
Yep. When you have a spring, it means you have a permeable layer. Depending upon the situation, that permeable layer may be gravels. It might be a fault line. It could be all kinds of things. However, the spring-fed lake can easily be fed underwater. Hey, Dave, how's it going? And it can be underground channels that are filled with gravels and such that allow high permeability. If it was surrounded by bedrock, then you have generally a fault or something that is allowing the water to go through quite easily. So it can be advantageous, but you'd want to look and see why the water was moving so easily. So it could have some value, but in and of itself, it doesn't really indicate anything with any assurity. Okay. Except that there's some permeability somewhere. But permeability can be where the gold is, depending upon what happened to make some structure permeable. So I hope that answers your question. The lake itself may be hard to do much.
You could try taking a sample
But
of the
see,
water.
if you can find where the where the spring is, that could be kind of interesting.
You could try
and
doing a
see what
water
causes-
analysis.
Yeah, you could do water analyses or stuff. There was a mine in Oregon that we looked at years ago. The reason it was found was because there was a spring in the side of the mountain. The guy digs in there, and there's a vein right there that actually had some pretty good grade arsenal pyrite ores. But again, that's one of those things that you have to examine the situation. But just because there's a spring doesn't necessarily mean anything. But find out why there's a spring, and it may easily be associated with something of use. Okay. So especially on the side of a hill, a spring usually means some kind of a fault line or breccia zone or something, which could easily be a have some valuable minerals. And Honey Bunny is correct. Look for some dissolved minerals coming out of solution. Iron is one of the easiest to see. Copper would be another one that you might see. Is it safe to put a mine shaft near the spring-fed lake? Would depend on a number of factors. I can tell you this. You can put a mine shaft almost anywhere, depending on how much money you want to spend to do it. But as a general rule, you're going to have to get permitting. You're going to have to figure out what the geology is, what the hydrology is. I mean, if you have a spring-fed lake in a porous structure and you start trying to drive a shaft down there, you're going to be making a lot of water, and that can be a real problem. Now, in South Africa, they had to go through 1 to 2 kilometers of broken rock completely filled with water. It was basically limestone that had caves in it, and it was all below the water table. So what they had to do was they would drill holes and inject fine-grained concrete called grout for 500 feet in all directions from the proposed mine shaft. And then that would cause you'd have a good solid cylinder of rock to drive the shaft through. But that's how they did it. And you can see the challenge of going through 1 to 2 kilometers of Swiss cheese with water, which is basically what it was. And at the bottom of those, at the depths they're operating, the pressure of the water is so high that, like, the West Driefontein mine in South Africa had a crack open up. Nobody ever got to see the crack because of the water gushing out and this and that. But they figured it could have been as small as 1 inch by 10 feet long. And it was putting out, I believe it was 6 million gallons a day, might have been 12 million gallons a day. But anyhow, it was more than the pumping capacity of the mine. So they had to very quickly both install extra pumping capacity, and they also drove a connection to a neighboring mine, which had extra pumping capacity, which they could then send some of the water to and get it out of there. It took about a month to get the situation stabilized. Part of the problem was that the water falling down the mine shaft was sucking the air with it. So the miners that were having to try and seal the leak were working in winds of up to 100 miles an hour. They literally have to winch them into the work area and then winch them back out again. And what they did was let's suppose you had a tunnel here. You have a drift, and there's a crack, and that's to scale, basically. And it's just pouring out a huge amount of water. Side view, here's your drift, here's your crack, here's all this water flowing. What they did was they came in and they built 2 bulkheads, and through the bulkheads they had pipes, and at the end of the pipe they had a valve. Okay, so once they got these bulkheads built, they injected grout and filled it with concrete, and then once the concrete was set, they closed the valve. That stopped the water flow. Then they put in another bulkhead, filled this with grout, another bulkhead, filled this with grout, another bulkhead, filled this with grout, until they had 100 feet of solid grout between where the leak was and where the mine was. So that took them approximately a month to accomplish. No miners were lost in the installing of the cork. Okay, but yes, it was a big mine. It was a very valuable mine. It was, I think, it goes to 16,000 feet deep. It actually has 2 subshafts to get to the bottom. For those of you who aren't aware, whenever you hang something from a cable, there comes a point in time where the cable weighs more than the load. And eventually you reach a point where the weight of the cable exceeds the strength of the cable and it breaks. Every cable has a amount that it can hang before it goes snap. And so currently that limit with a cage and a load on the cage and everything else is about 6,000 feet. So if here's the surface of the earth, and this is the 1 mile mark, here's the 2 mile mark, here's the 3 mile mark, and you need to get down here. You take one shaft and drive it down here, then you have a tunnel, and then you make another shaft down to here, then you have a tunnel, then you have another shaft that gets you down to the actual working level. So you've got 3 shafts, you got your primary, and then this is a sub shaft. And this is a sub shaft. And that's what you have to do to get to those extreme depths, because you can only go about 6,000 feet at a single whack, because the weight of the cable becomes your limiting factor. And so this is one of the reasons why the South African mines are some of the most challenging engineering on the planet. So yeah, it's some very serious engineering. In some of these mines, I'm not sure what it is nowadays, but it took the workers several hours to get from surface to their working area, and then it took another several hours for them to get back to surface. So you might have a 12-hour shift where you're only working 6 hours. And the rest of the time you're just traveling, walking, riding hoists, riding various mechanized equipment.
Why is your elevator so slow?
It's not slow. I mean, it only has a certain number of people you can drop at one time. Well, the term drop is probably a poor choice of words.
Yeah, because the elevator is in like the John Hancock building, which is about 700 feet tall
Mhm.
will get you to the top in 30 seconds.
Okay, now you're talking 700 feet. So we take
In 30 seconds.
just a minute. 6,000 divided by 700 equals 8.5. So you're talking about a 5-minute ride. Then the cage has to go up again. So 10 minutes to drop a load of miners. And then you got to go to another one. So you take another drop of load of miners, then another load of miners. Then you got to go a mile or two to your working area. And these levels are not flat. They go up and down. It's 3-dimensional. You're following the ore and such. And so it can get extremely complex. And say, nice, straight, flat roads are not the norm underground. You can have uh, track drifts that are relatively straight and they have to be pretty darn flat. But yeah, the other problem is the temperatures down here, the rock temperatures can exceed 160 degrees Fahrenheit. Your humidities are approaching 100%. The physical capacity of the human body to continue functioning in those sort of conditions is extremely limited. So you may have to have cooling off stations. They pump refrigerated water down here to heat exchangers, and they can cool the air just before it's at the working area or if there's a shop or something like this. So again, you may have heat respite areas, rest areas where you're getting a rest from the heat. Another thing you can do is you can have blue ice vests where literally you have a somewhat insulated vest that has blue ice packets in it. At the end of shift, they hang it in a freezer. When you come to work, you check it out of the freezer and you can put it on. And that's another way you can help keep the human body functioning under those conditions. And so the engineering effort required to keep these things going is pretty extraordinary. The rock pressure is so great that you have what's known as rock burst, where the rock itself can just exceed its tensile strength and literally just explode. Earlier in the live stream, when I was talking about stoles, well, we think of a stole as like the trunk of a tree. Down there, a stole weighs 10 tons. It's 5 feet in diameter and it's made out of steel. Like 1-inch thick wall steel, a cylinder with flat steel plate ends, things like that. And so I say everything they do is just on a scale that is hard to really comprehend. But there's that much gold down there that it makes it worthwhile. Obviously, this is not what they started over there. They were starting with much shallower depths initially, but even then, from the very beginning, it was quite challenging. I mean, 6,000 feet, 7,000 feet, things like that. And then they just kept going deeper and deeper. They also pretty much invented the geostatistics that we use even today to figure out the shape and grade of an ore body from drill samples in the 1800s in South Africa. Because again, they had to. They were drilling holes over a mile deep just to get to the ore body so they could get samples from the ore body. So if your holes are 100 feet apart and they're this big, you better do some good math. You're not doing simple averaging because if you miscalculate how much gold there is in that rock, yeah, you can waste a whole bunch of money going after it. So they invented something called kriging, which involves kind of like weighted averaging in 3 dimensions. You'll pick a 3-dimensional point in space, like right here, and then it looks all around it in 3 dimensions for other samples anywhere around it, and then applies mathematics to determine what is the most likely value of this zone that they're looking at. You know, I would think so, Tricky. That should be some fairly simple stuff. And I say, even with low technology. Anything more than waist deep can collapse. Even waist deep can, but at least then they can dig you out. But yeah, you need to be cautious. I'm sure that in the Philippines, there are experienced miners who have played that game many, many a time. They've done exactly what you need to be done, and they know exactly how to do it. So, let's say that's relatively straightforward technology. But yeah, things like South Africa, not straightforward in the slightest. What is deepest at 4 kilometers, Jeff? 4 kilometers, let's see, 3,000 times 4, that's only 12,000 feet roughly. Jeff, I know that there's mines in South Africa that are down to almost 18,000 feet. It's just ridiculous. That's not a technical issue. That's a people issue, Tricky. But it is a serious issue. Hey, Scotty, how's it going? Well, let's see. Let's go with West Driefontein. West Driefontein, EIN. West Driefontein Gold Mine. Driefontein Mine. 1937, aided by a magnetometer, Dr. Rudolf Kramen discovered a vast gold deposit of the West Wits mine near Charlton, South Africa. Location, owner, Sibanye, Stillwater. Wow.
There's apparently severe flooding in parts of northern Vermont.
Okay.
It's still raining like a mofo in Maine.
On 30th August 2005, Driefontein officially poured its 100 millionth ounce of gold. Wow, that's amazing. It doesn't show shit about it. I mean, it's like 5 paragraphs. It doesn't tell you how deep it is or anything like that. Year of acquisition, 2002. Wow. That's pretty lame. Pretty lame. West Driefontein Gold Mine, depth. Let's see what happens there. Got a map. 3.42 kilometers. Yeah, I'm thinking that's, let's see, 3.42 times 1,000 times.
It's about 2 miles.
Times 3. Yeah, it's only 10,000 feet. Now, it was a lot deeper than that. West Driefontein. I used to work for Goldfields, and they had a book they gave to all of us. It was like the first, 1 century or something like that. And that's where I got these numbers. 6 of the 10 deepest mines are in Africa, 4 are located in Canada. Let's see. Maponig mine. It is currently the deepest mine. Currently, the operating depth.
Koenig. K-O-E?
No, Mponeng. Don't ask me how you pronuncify it.
Oh, Koenig.
Poning? Yeah, that's close enough.
Got a silent end, so to speak.
Produced 265,000 ounces of gold in 2018. The operating depth ranged from 3.16 to 3.84 kilometers at the end of 2018. Ongoing expansions are expected to extend the operating depth to 4.27 Driefontein. It is currently the second deepest mine in the world. The deck is extended up to 6 producing shafts. Let's see. Doesn't say what it was in the past. These are current depths. Anyhow, as I say, when I was working for Goldfields, they said it was like 18,000 feet. You need a wrench? What kind of wrench and why do you need one? 3 meters equals 10 feet. Okay, thank you, Chris.
Well, yeah, 3 meters equals 10 feet.
As opposed to 1 meter equals 3 feet. Yeah, that's good. Yeah, because I know it's like 39 inches or something. You need a wrench? Okay, you want a wrench, Indiana Gold Getter? Okay, let's see. Add as a moderator. Standard moderator. Okay, I think standard moderators for posting links. Okay, Scotty. There you go. There you go. You got your wrench, Scotty.
You're like Oprah.
What?
You've got a wrench. You've got a wrench. Everybody gets a wrench.
Look under your seat. You've got a wrench. You betcha, Scotty. Make sure not to abuse it or we'll cry. Evil will give you the look. That will be...
the goddess will be displeased.
Yes, that would be a bad thing, Scotty. Just be warned. Anyhow, so I bet you do, honey bunny. I was over at Lauren's today, and he's got a shop full of welders and wrenches and thingy poos. I don't know, Lauren, are you still here? Probably not. It's getting a little bit late. But we were, doing build up and hard face on the RC46 today. Those side plates were so worn that at the bottom of the V of the jaw, on the outside of the side plate, which is 3/8 inch steel, by the way, there was actually a little bulge where the rocks had worn through so much that as the movable jaw was pushing on them, they'd actually bulged it out. So we pounded it back in. Now that was not without fear, because I'm holding it's a shaft about this big in diameter, holding on the high spot there, while Lauren is swacking it with like a 10-pound hammer. And knowing me, I know the only way to really do that and hold steady is just close my eyes. And just that way I can't see it, I can't flinch, which is a lot safer. And he never missed, never, did anything bad or whatever. We eventually got it all flattened out on the outside. Then he welded up some, I don't know, 3.5 inch angle, something like that, 3/16 wall, at least quarter inch wall probably on the outside to keep things from warping, and also to back it up so as he was filling it, it didn't just blow through. And welded those on, and then we put some of the support cross members in and tightened them down to hold everything. And then he would weld, he'd take his time. He'd weld 1 or 2 or 3 beads, depending on how big they were, then take an air nozzle and blow it for a bit, cool it off, weld a little more, cool it off. And then once he had a certain amount done, he was figuring the plate was starting to get a little too much heat, too big an area, then he would stop and go do something else while I would take the grinder and grind it down to the appropriate height. And the buildup, we were trying to take to about an 1/8 inch below finish grade, finished surface. And then he would hard face, and I would grind it down. And I left it high. We put the movable plate to get, a minimum gap. I mean, we're only looking at maybe a 1/16 of an inch gap between the movable plate and the sidewall, which is less than it comes from the factory. But that sidewall in that area is now hard face too. So when I left, he hadn't quite got it all done. I mean, we spent most of the day him welding while I took a rest, and then me grinding while he did other stuff. And it still had quite a bit to go by the end of the day, but he should have the welding done. So now I got to finish all the grinding. Then we need to make the spacer for the toggle plate pivot. But that's all that is 2 inch by 1/8 inch steel strap. It's going to have 4 holes for the bolts that hold the toggle lower hinge point to it. So we'll just pull that off, put in a little piece of strap, bolt it right back down again. And that'll move it out 1/8 of an inch to take into account all the wear that's happened over the years. And then we should be back in business, and it should be good for quite a while. We also changed the drive chain for the rollers. That drive chain was getting kind of worn, so bought a new one. That was like, what was that? $4 or something? $7? I don't know what it was, but it was really cheap.
Yeah, it was like 50 cents a link or 40 cents.
Not a link, but like foot.
A foot, yeah. It was not expensive.
No, it wasn't.
It was cheap enough that I told you to get 2 and you ignored me.
Yeah. No, David, we don't need to balance it because it's already all out of balance. It has an eccentric, and so it oscillates back and forth. It's not balanced to begin with, but it operates at a slow enough RPM that's not a big problem. Although it was funny, the old engine wore out, and we put a new engine on it, and the person who ordered the engine didn't realize that there was an internal gear reduction in the old engine, like about a 10-to-1. Something like, it was like 6-to-1, 10-to-1, something like that. It wasn't a small reduction. It's pretty significant. And so I put the new engine in place, and I'm like, shafts kind of cattywampus, and not cattywampus, but it's in a different spot a little bit, and it's the wrong length, and the belts don't fit, and blah blah blah. And hooked it all up, got fired it up. Oh my God, it was like a chipmunk on crack. It was just going crazy. even at low idle. It's just meek. So we figured out what the problem was and got the correct engine. But yeah, it was pretty funny. Uh, I had somebody with a roller. Yeah, you got to be careful when you change things. But anyhow, so it's got the right engine on it and everything now, and we're going to have to put a snorkel on that too. Although I'm in most cases, I can drastically reduce the amount of dust to the air intake by simply rotating it into the wind. Whenever there's a nice, good prevailing wind, it's pretty easy to keep the air intake upwind of the crusher by what is that, 18 inches or something like that. It works fine. But we do need to put an actual snorkel like we do on the Stutenroth. That's working quite well, by the way. Uh, it was when we put the little crane on the Stutenroth, that worked well as a place to hang the snorkel. So it's working quite well. Very happy with that setup. So, yeah, it'll be another couple of days before we get the RC46 all back together again. Shouldn't be too much of a problem at this point, though, because the welding was not distorting anything. It was working pretty well. So, should be just a matter of grinding her down and making that shim and then just putting everything back together again. So, it shouldn't take too long. And then we'll have that ready to go. We got samples from Top of the Hill that need to be crushed and split. We need to be ready to start crushing ore from Montana B. And uh, that's going to be a necessity. Yeah. Did you bring home built? Did you bring your home built separation system up to Montana B? Yes. You're talking about gravity separation system, the trip concentrator. Yes, I did. It did not work on Montana B because the gold was so freaking fine. Yeah, it was only getting about 20% recovery. That's why we had to go to the leaching. However, different ores do different things, so we may very well be able to put it to good use in the future. And every ore that we, uh, every new ore that we get will have to run through the same testing process to determine what type of separation makes sense. Generally, even if you get a fairly good recovery with a gravity separation, you're probably in a hard rock deposit going to have enough gold left. Miller table is way too slow, and it would not work on this gold, Pedro. First of all, we're running 500 pounds an hour, but we're also talking gold that is literally 1/4 the size of talcum powder. Okay, and he's happy to talk to him about it, but um, yeah, I also have another device that may work. No, it doesn't even float on the water, Honey Bunny. It just stays suspended in the water. I did testing where I just stirred it up, let it sit for a minute, decanted the top third of the water. The solids in the top third of the water were better grade than the raw ore was. That gives you an idea just how well this gold would suspend. It was insane. Yeah, pretty much. But that works great for leaching, the real small gold like that. By the way, we are still, every time we dump a tank of ore, we're running it over the sluice. Um, Last tank we did get detectable gold, but I don't know, out of a 1,500-pound batch, we got way less than a tenth of a gram,
Oh yeah.
maybe a couple milligrams. What do you think? Point, not milligrams, maybe like 2/100ths of a gram, maybe.
Yeah, I mean maybe.
Yeah, 1 or 2 hundredths
We're saving it. It's all going to get melted at
of
the end
of
the
a
year.
gram. So let's say we just put that aside. Sooner or later, yeah. What we're doing is we're monitoring. So if the character of the ore changes, we will see it, and we will know that, okay, now we have to worry about coarse gold. And coarse for us is anything over 50 mesh. Um, we've determined by physical testing that the Eco Gold X will dissolve in a beaker 100 mesh gold in about 10 days. Okay. Um, so we're not too worried about anything under 100 mesh because it goes out on the tailings pad and it will continue to leach for a long time. So not worried about that. If we have coarse gold, it's either going to get caught in that little spot in the bottom of the tank that it has to get over a lip to get out. Any really big gold, is going to still be in the bottom of the tank at the end of the season. But the intermediate size gold, you might say, is we're washing out the tank. They can get washed over the lip and then go down the outlet and through the sluice box. So we should get it there. So we're catching, let's say like maybe 1 or 2 hundredths of a gram of like 50 mesh gold in the sluice box the last batch. And thank you, Jeff. I would love to, take the Hilti and start driving it into something and have it just start gouging instead of breaking. That would be fun. Good. But yeah, we're monitoring the situation. So if coarse gold does show up, we won't wind up throwing it into the leach pad. It will wind up being trapped before that, and then we'll know, okay, we now have an issue we have to address. And then we can do that. But you have to observe it first. Agreed, Chris. Your best bet would be to have your coarse gold before the leach tank, because there's no sense doing that. But that again, it adds a lot of complication to the system at this stage. So prefer not to do that until we need to. But you're absolutely correct. It would be better to have your gravity separation before the agitation tank. But we'll fix that issue if we run into it. From what Jeff Kablock has said, he wants to give us about 10 tons of one of his dumps. I presume the main reason is to figure out exactly how to get the gold out of it. Yep. But I mean, he says, I'll give you 10 tons to play with for free, which is great. The assays he showed me were better than 1 ounce to the ton, assuming those are representative of the dump.
What about the silver?
Forget. I could probably look it up. I presume it was in there, but I do not know for sure, little one. But that ore may very well require a gravity separation. It's okay, John. Metal detector helps. But yeah, it's one of those things that you design your system around the ore. My gravity separation device, actually, I've got two different ones that do two different things a bit. um, are not really designed to catch real chunky gold, although it wouldn't be hard. But yeah, and so yeah, I say it's one of those things that little modifications would solve the issue, but right now neither one of them's really optimized for you know 10 mesh gold. Although I say either one of them could very easily deal with it with just minor modifications. But we'll see. The other thing is, do you have a bunch of heavy minerals? Eva, of course, is a huge fan of silver. Around here, that silver is usually going to be with some other stuff. So you're going to wind up with a fair amount of heavy minerals to deal with, and the sluice box will tend to plug up. So now you need something that's more of a continuous flow process, which is my Rogue Wave table is a continuous flow process. Magnetics are pretty easy to deal with. Sulfides, pretty much got to go gravity. And we could do all kinds of stuff, Chris. But see, right now you mix the solids and the liquids in the tank. So now you have to add another mixing and pumping station because we're not on a hillside. If you're on a hillside, it becomes a lot simpler because mercury bed at the bottom of the tailings before classifier. Something like that would probably work, Pedro. However, it would be highly illegal in Montana. So we would, try and avoid the mercury. And Chris, I know sitting up on the tank, but how does the solids and the liquids get up there? Are you pumping the liquid and then dumping the solids in like I currently am? So there's a number of ways of doing it, but when it's all built on a single flat plane surface and gravity's not necessarily your friend, it just adds complexity. Right now, the doofus is fighting gravity. I take bucket, dump it in the top of the tank. No big deal. I can keep up with the crusher without difficulty, and I get good exercise. But if we're like slurrying it and then pumping it, yeah, now you're adding another couple of devices. I think I see what you're saying, but at a minimum, I understand it's not that complicated, but it's more complicated than what we have, and we have absolutely no need because there's nothing there to capture. Now, if we run into something to capture, yep, now we got to do something. But I say right now, might save you from leaning over to dump the buckets in too. Let's see, just dump your bucket, just run a hose from a pump to boil it. Yeah. And then from the boil tank, as you call it, Chris, how does it get into the top of the agitation tank? Is it above the top of the agitation tank so it kind of overflows? Or does it act like again, if it's a hopper, it's going to overflow. So I got to get it higher up to get it in there. And that just means I got to have a taller ladder. Again, if we run into the problem, it's fairly easy to fix in a couple of different ways. But right now there is no problem. What's that one? A solution in search of a problem? We're monitoring the situation. If we get the problem, we'll spend the money, add the complexity, and take the time to deal with it. Until then, this will work. That's true, Kodak. At least I presume so. What about copper sulfate, Tricky? He's talking about coarse gold, honey bunny. Yeah, I say before I even try unknown character ore, I'm going to be doing on an laboratory scale. I'll crush. I'll be doing hand panning and some other, bottle rolls, things like this on a very small, like half-kilo samples sort of thing. If we wind up with an issue showing its ugly head, we'll be dealing with it real early in the process before we ever get it into the mill. Because, there's always the possibility, among other things, that the Eco Goldex will either be radically consumed or poisoned or something by something in a new ore. You always need to test this on a very limited scale. What, little one?
Speaking of things in the tank,
what?
Did you ever post that video with the algal blooms?
No, I didn't. It's been a little busy, but yeah. By the way, in our what do you call it? The Baron tank, one of the Baron tanks, we actually have a little algal bloom going
it's not
on.
A little algal bloom. The entire surface of the water was covered.
Yeah, it's got a green scum on top. It's and not just a light green scum, but I mean it's got some thickness to it. It was pretty hilarious. It shows how non-toxic the solution is, But yeah, that's kind of funny. Yeah, we could add a little bit of copper sulfate would probably kill it. Amines breaking down make good fertilizer. Yeah, I told her, urea, and things like that. That's fertilizer. So
yeah, but we've never had algal blooms before.
We've had a lot of rain. That dilutes things a lot,
I'm telling you.
Oh my goodness, Tricky, that sounds hilarious. Yeah. Yeah, it would take very, very little to kill it if we need to. We'll have to see if it stays there. My guess is that the stuff we pumped out of the pregnant pond had been diluted enough with rainwater that you didn't do a pH on that, did you, little one?
No, I'm going to be doing a pH on that one.
Yeah, you can do a pH on that one next time we're out there and see. My guess is that the pH has dropped. And
well, I still think it was all the organics in that load of dump material that fouled my liquid.
Possibly. We also that particular
my pH kept going nuts on that back.
Yes, we also had a lot of organics in that particular load because it was from the dump on the side of the hill there. And I need to get some water here. So just a second, I'm getting thirsty.
Just saying.
I'm sure it has to do with a temporary change in the solution. And I'm not going to get too worried about it. Unless it's a bit persistent. I also don't like to add stuff into the circuit that I don't have to. Transesterification process from local fryer oil, huh? Yeah, I've heard that works pretty pretty well. We don't have any diesel engines, so it wouldn't matter. We've got all of our generators are little gas engines, but and none of the pickups we use are diesels either. Lauren's got a diesel. Anyhow, so yeah, that was kind of an interesting little thing. um, that's not necessarily a bad idea, Honey Bunny. The problem I have with diesels nowadays is they're so technical. You know, an old Caterpillar diesel with an injector pump and stuff is pretty straightforward. Nowadays, they've got all these computers and sensors and this is and that's is. And when your injectors wear out, it costs you $6,000 just for the injectors, and then you got to install it and things like that. Now they do a fantastic job when they work, but when they don't work, you're kind of screwed. Yeah. Um, so it's like, take care, David. We'll do our best, and hopefully by this next weekend we'll be ready to go out in the field again. The RC46 is going to be kind of the limiting factor, but I think we'll be able to get that done by Thursday evening, and then we can head up without a problem. If not, I don't know. Depends on how close we are to getting it finished and this and that. But I mean, I think there's 90% probability we'll go this weekend. Okay, we will, Tricky. Kiss the babies.
Yeah, I already told Tricky he got kiss babies for me.
Yep. Let me see what the weather looks like here. Let's see. So this weekend is supposed to be hot and sunny.
Yeah.
The hot part is undesirable. The dry works. Bummer.
I can pretty much guarantee it's not going to be that hot up at Montana Bay.
Yeah. It will be unpleasantly hot there. Well, now, when I'm down in the hole, not a problem.
When you're down in the hole, not a problem. And we can work early in the morning and then take an afternoon siesta, and then we can work until later night at night.
We can. Yeah. As I say, working in the hole is not a problem for me.
Yeah. And I've got shade and I'll have plenty to drink.
Yeah. Are you not going to be building a fire up there?
No, I do have some scrap wood that needs to be burned, but I ain't doing it right now.
Yeah, I wouldn't think so. Save that for fall. So, yeah, let's say that we'll probably go to Montana Bee this week. I need to crush up. That's good, John. I like that. And crush and split some samples from top of the hill and send them off for analysis. And that'll give us some more guidance up there at top of the hill. We need to do a substantial amount more mapping, although I'm all set up now. So when we're in the field, we can just GPS, take notes, and then go ahead and plot them quite easily. So that's not a big problem there. But we've only had one sample up there where I could even spot any gold in the panning. So we have very little guidance, and we're still kind of feeling our way around up there. Yeah, we're really not sure what's going on. But there's been a lot of surface disturbance in various places. And less than a mile away is, well, if you take a mile circumference radius around there, there's a significant number of old, significant to substantial size mines. So it looks interesting. We got a lot of work to do yet to get any kind of an idea what the hell's going on there, but that's kind of cool. Yeah, that's not a bad idea. What I can do is on my CAD program, because in layers and stuff, I can kind of anonymize a few things and show how the structures are working. Again, it's a situation where there's a constant tension between being forthcoming and maintaining the proper level of confidentiality. It becomes frustrating at times to me, but confidentiality has to be the number one priority. Whenever they come in conflict, confidentiality wins. So I say that's the thing. But yeah, the whole top of the hill situation is a classic case of going somewhere where you really don't know what's going on. What is a stringer? There's two different things that can be called a stringer. There is a stringer and a stringer vein. A stringer generally means a small vein, okay? Something like this wide or whatever, just a little stringer of something through there. There's a more complex structure that is technically called a stringer vein, where you have like a broken zone of rock that's got a number of little veinlets in there, and you can have it from a number of different episodes, millions of years apart theoretically, but where you can see that this zone here has a particular color and structure, and this one right next to it is different. If you look at my very first video, Where Does Gold Come From? You'll see a vein. It's not a stringer vein, but it's a vein, but you can clearly see three different zones in that one vein. Now, if that was in a broken area of rock and those veins were separated, that would be kind of what's called a stringer vein. Miners will use the term stringer to quite often just indicate a small vein, although that's not technically precise. I say so. The vein itself, whatever vein you have, is quite often made up, as Chris says, of different sections that are chemically different. And you need to analyze the vein according to those differences. You need to sample it. When you can see clearly different vein structures, you need to sample them separately, because the valuable mineral may be drastically concentrated in one of them and not others, and you can save a lot of money on processing. There's a mine here called the Drumlummon mine. The vein is 6 feet wide. That 4-inch section there runs 200 ounces to the ton silver. And that's a common phenomenon. So whenever you see a vein that's got different structures, sample them separately to see what they are. It may be too that they're valuable, but the chemistry, the mineralogy changes from structure to structure to where you have to change your separation technique. For example, this one here may have coarse gold in it, and this one over here does not. So this one over here can go straight to leaching. This one over here has to go to gravity separation first. things like that. This one may have lead and silver, and this one may have gold. Totally different separation technique. So that's why you have to, whenever you can see a difference, sample them separately. And that will tell you stuff. In the case of Montana B, we have, I don't know what, 8-10 different rock types.
Yeah.
And
like a 2 square foot area, they'll have like 5 or 6 different kinds of rock.
It's a mess, which again is quite typical because you've got.
And the funny part is the ones that look exactly alike visually, but ain't.
Yeah.
That's the funny part.
And some can be visually quite similar, and yet you can do some tests and say, well, they're actually quite different.
Oh, yeah.
But when you have a situation where first the rock gets broken, and then you have an event where hydrothermal solutions deposit something, and then thousands or even maybe a million years in the future, it gets broken again, and a different event does stuff, you can have some great changes in what you've got. And so I say, if you can see a visual difference, you need to sample it separately and test it separately in order to figure out what the heck you've got and what you can do with it and what can possibly make you money. Okay. So there's a lot of different things that happen in these hard rock mines. Placer mines can have some variation too, but I don't think they really hold a candle to the kind of variation you can get in a hard rock mine, in hard rock mining in general. So I hope that answers your question. And you'll notice, Hintern, that everyone just jumps in. That's one nice thing about our little community here, is we like to help out. Oh, by the way, Chris, you're kind of a latecomer here. I was talking to a guy from Nigeria this morning, and fairly simple situation, but it was interesting. I think he used Telegram or something. I'm not sure exactly when I looked at the phone and looked at the phone number, I go, I have no idea what that is, but I bet you that's Rohi from Nigeria. And so we had a nice talk, and he invited me over there, and I'm like, that'd be kind of interesting, but at the current time I can't, and I'm not sure. I mean, the way the world's going, I have no idea in terms of locations or times what would be smart and what would be not smart to do. I know that some places are quite hazardous. Others are just exotic and not necessarily that hazardous. But you have to research these things carefully and at the time. These things can change rather dramatically. So, no, Chris, he's not. He's just asking detailed questions about cyanide tank leaching. So, as I say, it was an interesting call. Nothing extraordinary or anything like that. Hopefully, I was able to help him out with some both technical and safety issues so that they can improve their situation and make sure nobody gets hurt. But yeah, it was an interesting call. I had a good time. So anyhow, yeah, when we had a guy from, that was Mali, wasn't it? Mm-hmm. That one guy? Yeah, wanted me to maybe come check out his mine in Mali. We were pretty sure the answer was no, not really, but we looked it up on the State Department website, So this is like a category 3 security zone or something like that. Look at the special recommendations. So we look at the special recommendations. Number 1, make sure you have a current will. Number 2, make sure long-term care for your children has been, taken care of. Number 3, make sure you have a what was it? A designated hostage negotiator and things like that. It's like, doesn't sound like a real fun tourist destination to me. Oh, well, but that's the thing, honey bunny. I'm not experienced in those sort of situations, so I don't even know what kind of safety precautions to take and how to take them properly. Hiring a security, how the hell would I know who's a good security guard? You know, I wouldn't have any idea of how you pick a good bodyguard, who's competent, who's not just going to, sell you to the bad guys. Have no clue. It's not my game. And one thing that I have learned in 67 years is if you don't know the rules of the game and the stakes of your life, best not to play. Exactly, honey bunny. Why should I go there at all? I don't need to. Eva and I are having a good time where we're at. Now, who was it? I forget. The guy in Zimbabwe. That looked like a situation that was plausibly uh, not too bad.
Oh, sorry. What is his name?
Yeah, I forget his name, but anyhow, he's
No.
huh? You wrote the Petey the Pack Rat thing for him and stuff.
Yeah, I try for some reason.
Yeah, I forget his name right at the moment. We're getting old, but yeah, that looked like a situation that didn't look too bad. No, not Anders. Anders is in Sweden, and his son. No, not is it Anders? Yeah, Joachim is his son, and he's married to Haley, who we've known for quite a while. And they moved to Sweden a year or two ago, and they just bought their first house. So everything is going well with them, which is great. Yeah, Anders is the father, Joachim's father, and they're nice people. I've met Anders a couple of times. He was in my video driving the Miner Bago to the Good Enough mine, and
he had fun driving that.
Yeah, I mean that's the biggest vehicle he's ever driven, so that was cool because I mean it's just a fairly simple dirt road and a pickup truck, but for him it was an adventure, so it was great. And but yeah, gosh, I forget what is his name.
You've got him in your phone, but Kevin, no.
That's right, I do have him in my phone. He'll be under. I found out in my phone what I do is I put the location. So in this case, it would be Zimbabwe.
Actually, I think he was in Florida at the time.
Howard.
Yeah, Howard.
Yeah. See, Zimbabwe, Howard, and it's got his last name there too, but I'm not going to say it. But yeah, Howard was a nice guy. He came by and visited for a day or two over there in Tucson. And I say that's probably not a bad place to go to. But I say Mali, place like I don't know. Say I'd have to carefully consider these things. In case of Mali, the careful consideration takes about that long. But yeah, that's, I mean, right now down in Mexico can be very dangerous. because of the cartels and such. Would you be willing to come to South Korea? I think perhaps Eva would be happy to go to South Korea, although she does not like to fly.
I hate to fly, and it depends on the vaccine thing. There's a lot of shots I can't take.
Oh, and she says there's a lot of shots she can't take for vaccinations, but her son is stationed in South Korea, so that is something that is a possibility. Again, it's kind of hard to tell. The situation with the idiots in charge of the United States could change dramatically in a matter of weeks or months. But in theory, South Korea is an interesting country. It's a safe country in terms of it's got stability and such like that. And so excluding some, let's say, first of all, geopolitical stuff that could crop up at any time, and the fact that we'd have to fly to get there, I have no other real negative. I don't have a problem flying. Doesn't bother me, you know. Eva's not happy with it, and yes, you have the vaccination things and stuff like that. So there might be some technical issues that might make it difficult, but no, that'd be cool to go to South Korea. But we shall see what we shall see. That would be unfortunately, the best time would probably be in the wintertime for here, but that's going to be cold. That would be cold in North Korea too. It's basically about where Montana is. So, yeah, it would depend on the situation. But if you say the winter is the best, that would be fine, because up here, winter is when you can't get anything done. But yeah, that sounds like fun. We'd have to look at all the details and see how it all pencils out. But in theory, not a problem. Oh, dearie. By the way, I'm not sure what the deal is with Walt. Okay, Hintern, that could be cool. I wonder if we got the wrong month, because I expected Walt here last week, and he didn't show up. Now, August 5th, 6th, and 7th, that's a weekend. That might be when he was talking. She said between the 5th, 6th, and 7th. But that might have been in August. So I don't know. We'll just have to see. But yeah, I haven't heard anything from Walt. So I'm curious as to what happened there. Oh, and good news, everybody. Eva went to her doctor last week, and he examined her mouth and everything, and says he sees nothing there that is concerning to him. And her PET scans continue to come back negative. So there's no indication that the cancer is still around. So just letting you know. Okay, that looks good. When is your appointment for your dentures, little one?
A couple of Mondays from now, I believe.
Yeah, 24th. Okay. So she should get her dentures on the 24th, and we'll see what's going on. You take care, John. Anyhow, so I say good news with Eva there. My health seems to be okay. My knees and hips are wearing out, but they're not terribly uncomfortable at this point. So we'll worry about it later. Apparently, there's a pretty good knee replacement technician in town here, little one. One of the ladies that I go to church with had her knee replaced and said, yeah, it's not too bad. It's a little stiff. That's about it. It's only been 2 weeks. no pain, just stiffness.
Yeah.
So,
Well, I have heard, and they say that the advances in hip surgery, apparently they have you up and walking the same day, and people are walking out of the hospital like 2 or 3 days later these days. Bizarre and unaccountable shit right there.
um, good night, Pedro. I would um, go ahead and if you can get it up by a foot, um, I would see can you, when it's up a foot, can you reach in and like undo the bottom rollers or something to where you can fold it up even, you know, get even greater access or something like that. Um, if you could slide in, I mean, I used to be able to go through an 8-inch gap when I was in the uranium mine. I could crawl into a crib set by, you know, sliding through the between two 8x8s. But you know, if yeah, you can get inside or get a hand inside or this or that or the other, or even somebody else, uh, you know, a child of sufficient age to know what they're doing, you know, um, and can follow instructions because they can always come back out. Just make sure you block the door so it can't close to the point where they can get trapped inside, you know. But another thing you might do is go down to a like a truck stop or a truck repair shop and just ask. Say I got this kind of a trailer, and the door won't come. You got any ideas? You know, and they might be able to say, "Oh yeah, here's what it probably is, and here's how you fix it." Because if you have people that have been working on certain types of mechanisms for a long period of time, they quite often can tell you with 95% probability what the heck is going on. What are the symptoms? Oh, this is what it is. And this is how you deal with it, you know? So it can't hurt to ask. You may not get an answer, or they may say, well, you'll have to bring it in. It's like, well, sorry, it's parked. It's not licensed or anything like that. Or they might even have a guy, yeah, Fred there, he can go over after work for $50 and probably get that open for you. Something like that. Generally, you'd want to go to not a chain. It's not like the Peterbilt dealership or something, you know, and or something like that. But Fred's, truck repairs, they might very well be either help you and or as say they might just say, yeah, Daniel, can go over there after work for $50. He'll get it open for you. Again, can't hurt to ask. Well, that's why you don't go to the big, the big companies. You might even look like on Craigslist or something like that for truck repair. Like again, there's always somebody out there who's got the knowledge, who's getting paid $20 an hour, who'd much prefer to make $50 an hour for a short period of time. I have no idea, but I would imagine a big company like that, like Peterbilt or something. $500 an hour would not shock me. I mean, what is it now for if you bring your automobile into a regular mechanic shop? It's what, 120 bucks an hour?
Yeah, you take it to a dealership, it's usually like 125 an hour.
Yeah. So $500 an hour
mechanic there gets that
for a semi truck service or whatever, yeah, that wouldn't shock me very much. It would sure motivate me to try and fix it myself, though. There you go, honey bunny. Hey, Jeff, if Honey Bunny's near you, she might be interested. I don't know. But yeah, I say it's one of those deals. I mean, it's something Lauren could probably do. I'm sure he's in bed right now. But I say there's always people out there that have the knowledge and the experience that are willing to do it for a reasonable fee. It's the connecting the people up, and that's one thing the internet is good at. Is connecting people like that. Something like a door is not. I mean, if you had you needed an engine worked on, you got to be a little bit more careful who you get working on your engine. But working on a door, it's how hard can how badly can you mess this up? Yeah, you can mess it up, but it's not going to be.
Depends. Is it a door
real
with
expensive
manual stuff or a door with electric?
It's a roll-up door on the back of a semi-trailer.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, then that's
kind of like what we got on the Beluga.
Well, then that's not a problem at all.
It shouldn't be the big deal. Yeah. He says he can get it up about 12 inches. Yeah. So I say it shouldn't be a big problem.
Just enough for the goddess
an annoyance
to struggle through there.
Yeah. You could probably slide through there.
Oh, yeah.
Yep. Grease up your lithe body and slide it through.
Oh, now you're really cruising for bruising over there, dude. You're being a bad bear now. Bad bear.
Anyhow, let's say, is there anything else anyone has any questions on? I see we're down to 10 people. So it's
getting late. It's 9:30, and
it's getting 9:30.
We've had several missed starts and stops and things. And
I got to get up early in the morning too. Let's see.
Yeah, we've got rooms to do tomorrow. We've got errands to run.
Let's see. Oh no, I got. First, I got to go.
46, and
I've got to go to the physical therapist at 8:15 in the morning.
Yeah.
Good luck on that one, Chris. Let's see. What is this?
The 11th is tomorrow.
8:15. So that means I got to set my alarm for 7. Then I got to go help Lauren. Then come back and pick you up sometime in the afternoon to run those errands. And then we should probably try going out to the mill.
Yeah.
And giving it a stir and a test.
Well, that's what I was thinking. We do have to do the rooms and everything, but I figured we'd probably be going out to the mill in the late afternoon / early evening.
Yeah, it sounds about right.
We may even want to look at emptying it and start filling it. Get the ore out of there and just put plain old liquid in it.
Yep. It was so funny, Chris. Shortly after the unfortunate situation, I was over at Lauren's house, and his dad comes in the shop there, and he goes, "Hey, Lefty!" Just right out of the blue. It was hilarious. Yep, that was pretty hilarious. I agree, Chris. That was pretty good. Yeah, Jeff. Yeah, that's not too bad. Yeah, the problem with that honey bunny is it could start fires too. He's got possessions inside and stuff like that. So using a grinder could cause issues. You could use a drill and a saber saw and avoid the possibility of, incandescent sparks flying around. But yeah, there's all kinds of ways to make things happen. But you just try and avoid making a bigger mess. You could even theoretically cut a hole in the side, between the rows of rivets and make a hatch. And that'll get you in. Okay, well, don't see any new questions coming up or anything like that. So I think we're probably going to call it a live stream here. After 6 tries. Holy crap, YouTube.
Good night, everybody.
Yeah, I say a Sawzall, because you really don't have access to the inside, so you can't see what's happening in there. That would be my concern. Night, Graham. Have a nice afternoon. Thank you, Hintern. You two have a good night. And we'll have us fun. 6 times is a charm. Apparently so. It could be traffic situation. I don't know, because it got better as time went on. And so that might be part of YouTube is just crapping out. Who knows?
You never know what's going on.
Never know. Okay, well, I think I'm going to call it a night here. Thank you, everybody, for showing up and helping out people and stuff. I appreciate it. So happy prospecting and keep it safe out there.